Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hoystory On Air, Season 1, Episode 25. It is Wednesday, December 17th, 2025. 25th of these. Thanks for joining me today. Two-subject show today. First one's kind of, don't we have it good here in the United States that we don't have, or that we have the First Amendment and the Second Amendment? And are politicians less stupid generally than ones overseas, or at least less determined to create their perfect society? That always goes well. I've said it before, I did a segment on this a couple weeks ago. Great Britain, other kind of Anglosphere nations that have adopted a parliamentary system with no written constitution, no guarantees, they have a problem staying in their lane. The whole freedom of speech thing is long gone. Case in point, retired pastor faces criminal charges for preaching gospel sermon near Northern Ireland hospital. He gave the sermon within an abortion buffer zone. Okay, this, again, Northern Ireland, so this is ruled by Great Britain. Retired UK pastor will stand trial today, is facing criminal charges for preaching a gospel sermon inside a protected abortion buffer zone. Clive Johnson, 76, faces 2 charges under Northern Ireland's Abortion Services Safe Access Zones Act for conducting a religious service based on John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. That one. Prosecutors accused Johnston of influencing a protected person, whether directly or indirectly, by conducting a protest. He's also accused of failing to leave the zone when directed. The law bans anti-abortion protests and other behaviors within a buffer spanning 100 to 250 meters from each entrance or exit of an abortion provider. According to the nonprofit supporting his defense, he did not mention abortion, and no anti-abortion signs were present. This kind of gives the game away, doesn't it? I mean, to be honest, when I was younger, I was a little shocked because I grew up in a Swedish Baptist church, not a Southern Baptist church, a Swedish Baptist church, and fairly conservative theologically and all that jazz. And frankly, I didn't have to be religious to be anti-abortion. You know, the science is clear. That's a human being. But I was shocked a little later in life, a few years later, to encounter a politician, actually, who, we just got back from church and, we support abortion. Through all night, it's like, you went to a church and you support abortion. They exist. Maybe they don't exist so much in Britain. Maybe, the mainline churches here nowadays. I mean, you've got the Clintons are famous for, we go to a church where abortion's great. We celebrate abortion. And you see videos of these online all the time. But to merely assume because you're a Christian, that means you're anti-abortion, that kind of gives the game away, doesn't it? That seems to be like, okay, it's satanic is what it is. So he's facing trial. You've probably seen her before, but Christian woman's criminally charged for standing silently praying. Again, this is Isabel Von Spruce. You've probably seen her before. I've mentioned her before. This is an older picture of her. And here is the West Midlands Police, little fascist. We will not have you praying outside. We will not have you closing your eyes. Someone might think that you don't approve what's going on at this abortion clinic. Let's take a look at him.
How am I breaching the safety zone?
We've informed you, haven't we?
How am I breaching the safety
We've
zone?
informed you, haven't we, that your
No, you haven't. You haven't told me how I've broken it.
Breach, and we're asking if you could move away just to prevent.
There's lots of people present inside the zone. People are allowed to be present inside the zone.
You are allowed to walk through the zone, yes, but to be stood directly outside.
That isn't breaching anything, no.
That's your opinion, isn't it?
That's your opinion, isn't it? Yeah. This and she's had charges dismissed against her before, but again, the processes of punishment in the United States is a little reminiscent of what the baker in Colorado has had to go through after they charged it. Oh, you wouldn't make a custom cake for a gay couple. Oh, you must be punished. That's who they go after. Another one came up today. Twitter user jailed for 18 months for 2 anti-immigration tweets made after a Christmas market car attack. So, Islamists attacked a Christmas market, killed some people, viewed just 33 times. 33 people saw his tweet. And he's going to go to prison for 18 months. His posts were reported to police by Yarwood's own brother-in-law, who he did not get on with. Well, I mean, this is what they do. We will not have you saying things we do not like. Thank God for the First Amendment. Let's go. This segues into the response to the Bondi Beach Hanukkah attack. Let's hear what the Premier of New South Wales, the equivalent of the governor, had to say about what he's proposing they do in the wake of this horrific attack.
I'm also here to report that on the 22nd and 23rd of December, the government will call back the New South Wales Parliament to deal with urgent legislation that we believe is required pre-Christmas to keep the community safe and ensure there's unambiguous laws in place when it comes to public safety. Firstly, in relation to firearms legislation in the state, we are proposing a bill which hasn't been finally drafted, but we will share with the opposition as soon as possible to cap the number of firearms, to reclassify straight pull-up and pump-action shotguns, to look at reducing magazine capacity for shotguns, for prohibiting belt-fed magazines in those shotguns, and crucially removing NCAT as an appeal mechanism once a designation has been made about withdrawing a licence from the registered authority. I also want to say today that I am firmly of the view, having spoken with many community members, not just from the Jewish community, but right across Sydney, that protests right now in Sydney would be incredibly terrible for our community. In fact, they would rip apart our community, particularly protests about international events. I completely understand that there are people concerned about what's happening overseas, and of course they've got every right to be concerned, but my worry is about what's happening in Sydney right now. We'll look at, my concern is that a mass demonstration in this combustible situation with our multicultural community could light a flame that would be impossible to extinguish. So we're looking at reforms whereby when there is a terrorism designation in the state, the police commissioner may not accept applications for protests on the grounds that it will both stretch police resources and secondly, add to community disharmony and as a result, a combustible situation in the state.
Now, an important thing to note here is that this is what it takes for them to get to be concerned about protests. The Jews might protest how they've been treated the past few years, or how they have not been protected the past few years. So we're just going to cancel all protests. I'll get to it in a minute, but we'll take a look at what sort of protests they've allowed and what they've allowed to go on when it's targeted at, frankly, the Jews. But he did make one comment in there when they were going on his little rant about, oh, we're going to prevent certain things. We're going to limit magazine capacity. We're going to take away appeals process when we want to revoke your gun permit, gun ownership permit. It's not a carry permit around there. Carrying's no. Belt-fed shotguns. Belt-fed mag. I had never heard of such a thing. I follow firearms. I generally know stuff about firearms. Belt-fed firearms? What, belt-fed shotguns? I mean, I've seen ones that are like, little 22s. I've seen ones that, do rifles. I have never seen a belt-fed shotgun. So I went looking for it. Is there a, major, does Smith & Wesson or Benelli or, do any of these companies do a belt-fed shotgun? The answer is no. Do they exist? Apparently so. Let's take a look.
Got it. Got it.
So by my count, that's probably 25. I didn't count. There's let's say it's 30 rounds. It misfed 3 times. Other things to note on this: that thing is mounted to a post. It kind of has to be mounted to a post because belt fed, you've got to feed those, that needs to feed in straight. Otherwise you get even more problems with it chambering properly. But no one's carrying that around. This is a homemade jerry-rigged, one-of-a-kind shotgun. You're not carrying this thing around. You're not wielding it like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator or something. This is what you're worried about. It's like this tells you, that not only are they not firearms savvy, they don't know anyone who's firearms. With belt-fed shotgun, seriously? No, sit down. So what else is happening over there in Australia? Well, Jewish bagel shop owner says he's shutting down his shop. Those look like good bagels. I am disappointed. Avner's Bakery, run by Jewish celebrity chef Ed Halmagi. I don't know what makes a chef a celebrity anymore. Is closing his shop. It's no longer possible to make outwardly, publicly, proudly Jewish places and events safe in Australia. After 2 years of almost ceaseless anti-Semitic harassment, vandalism, and intimidation directed at our little bakery, we have to be realistic about the threats that exist going forwards. Congratulations. You haven't been protecting Jews. You have not, Australia. It's like, now that 15 of them or 16 of them got killed, 40 some wounded, some seriously. That death count could rise still. Great job, Australian politicians. You've imported this mess, and people point out, Jews were among the very first. I realize it's a penal colony, but the founding and whatnot. They've been there longer than the vast majority of these recent Muslim immigrants that you've brought in, and they're not killing other ethnic groups or religious groups. Go figure. This is the sort of thing we get. Babylon Bee. This is the first of a few this episode. To halt violence against Jews, Australia bans Hanukkah. Again, Babylon Bee, it's satire. To stem the growing tide of violence against its Jewish citizens, the Australian government has moved to officially ban the celebration of Hanukkah. Prime Minister Albanese made the announcement in the wake of Islamic attacks on a public Hanukkah celebration, which Albanese believed prompted the killings. If Jews were not celebrating Hanukkah, this tragedy could have been prevented, he said Albanese. Some people don't want to blame Hanukkah, but let me ask you, did people get shot anywhere else except at the Hanukkah celebration? No. This is because of Hanukkah. How many lives do we have to lose because of Hanukkah before we act? There's more. The link to the whole thing will be in the dump, the link dump in the show notes on Substack and on YouTube. But this is kind of the attitude you get. I mean, it's satire because, frankly, it's kind of believable. Because what have they done? There's going to be no public protest going forward. Is carrying a menorah around a public protest? Could be seen that way if you want to see it that way. Notably, Albanese, the President of Australia, Prime Minister of Australia, has recognized a Palestinian state. That didn't save Jews in his country from being mowed down. He rewarded the attack on Israel, basically. I mean, and Canada did it too. There's a bunch of other states, Ireland, who did it. You're rewarding terrorism. You're rewarding terrorism. No surprise there. Going to get to the second part of this. Follow up on Bondi Beach. And Australian police are not coming out of this looking particularly good. I want to start out with a piece from Douglas Murray. This was published in City Journal. The massacre at Bondi Beach was inevitable. Australia has long tolerated the proponents of such mayhem and silenced those who raised the alarm. So this is kind of connected to the last segment, but it's different enough, and there's some stuff in here that I think you should know about. Because it's kind of how the playbook plays out in a lot of these places. It's how it plays out in the UK with banning the Maccabees Tel Aviv fans. It's how it plays out in Amsterdam with, you had a pogrom that night where they were hunting down Maccabi Tel Aviv fans after the game. So this is the playbook. Australia is not alone in this. It's just today's example / cautionary tale. So Douglas Murray writes, do words have any meaning? Most people think so, which is why there's an endless debate about which words should be permitted by law, which should be a matter for the law, and which words should be debated in the realm of manners. Where does gas the Jews fit into that? There are contexts where those words could be in the realm of manners. For instance, somebody might use them in a comedy club doing a routine about forbidden statements. But how about using them immediately after the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust? How about if the words are used on the streets by a mob, not in a spirit of jest, but of intent? That's what happened outside the Sydney Opera House on October 9th, 2023, 2 days after Hamas and other Palestinian terrorists invaded Israel, slaughtered 1,200 people, and took another 250 hostage. The people in the mob outside the Opera House that night were not objecting to the war that resulted from that massacre. They were not trying out some new comedy material. They were using the massacre of Jews as the impetus to stand in their own city, oceans away, and advocate for the gassing of Jews. Of course, the Australian authorities did not take any meaningful action regarding that protest. no more than they chose to take action against the numberless protests in major Australian cities since October 2023, in which the protesters have chanted, "Globalize the Intifada," and much more. Which is not to say the Australian government are free speech absolutists. They are not. Nor does Australia have the equivalent of the First Amendment, which strictly protects free speech, even up to the point of incitement. On the contrary, the Australian authorities are among the toughest in the world when it comes to policing speech. Just this past June, Australia barred an Israeli called Hillel Fuld from coming into the country. Fuld is a pro-Israel activist whose brother Ari Fuld was stabbed to death by a jihadist terrorist in 2018. Ari Fuld was a hero in his life and in his final moments when, taking on the terrorists, he saved many more lives. But the Australian authorities were persuaded that the brother of the slain Ari could cause a risk to the health, safety, or good order in Australia. And so he was barred from entry. It is worth digesting that for a moment. A man whose brother was killed by a terrorist should not enter Australia because he could potentially alert people to the threat of Islamist terrorism, which could in itself cause public disorder. Not to be too personal about this, but I've had a similar experience with the Australian authorities. When I last did a speaking tour of theaters in Australia in the summer of 2024, I received a letter warning me about the terms of my visit. Though they granted this British-born, American-based author the right to speak in Australia, they made it clear that if I said anything, or was even reported as having said anything, which could cause community tensions, a supremely vague concept, then I would instantly have my visa revoked and be removed from the country. This is the standard in modern Australia. Yet calls for jihad, intifada, gassing, and more have been tolerated and gone unpublished. Now, in fairness, there's some debate on whether they said gas the Jews. I'm not sure. Do I trust the Australian authorities to be the final judge and arbiter of this? No, not really. I'll show you that video here in a minute. We'll see. This is a tweet from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Maybe I should have done the order a little bit differently. But this Gas the Jews protest, this is what Jews refer to it as. Again, there's dispute over whether it was actually chanted. As you can see in the third paragraph, at the time, Australian police claimed, despite witness statements to the contrary, that people were in fact chanting, "Where is the Jews?" as if that somehow made it better. It doesn't make it better, because it implies, where are they? And this is not, they didn't want to hug them. They didn't want to praise them. They didn't want to thank them. They didn't want to assuage their, they didn't want to give them comfort in the wake of 1,200 murdered and 250 kidnapped 2 days after the October 7th attacks. That's not why they were yelling, "Where are the Jews?" It wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts. They don't have much goodness in their hearts. Campaign Against Anti-Semitism thinks they spotted in their video, in the plenty of video footage that occurred that night, possibly these two killers. Again, if they would have, if Australia said, "No, this is out of bounds," and if you're not a citizen, or maybe even if you are a citizen, again, the rules are different in these parliamentary countries with no written constitution. I'd be curious to hear if they're, from legal scholars in these countries, is there really anything stopping you from stripping citizenship and evicting some of these first or second generation Islamists who are pro-terrorist, frankly? Be interesting to note, but let's, there's no audio on this video, but let's take a look. So this appears to be the son. Maybe that's him. That looks like the father. I don't know if that's accurate. Could be. Going on to that protest, video analysis finds no evidence of "Gas the Jews" being chanted. Independent analysis says, "Where's the Jews?" And it takes a prominent Jewish leader to say it's just as bad. A police strike force continues to investigate offenses. I Googled that. As far as I could tell, there were about 11 arrests, and there were tens of thousands of anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish protesters there. 11, and they weren't all based on that night. Some of them were in the following days. I'm going to leave it to you, listener, to, and I've cut this down just to the kind of relevant part. I'm going to leave this to you to determine whether it's "Where's the Jews" or "Gas the Jews." In my personal opinion, well, I'll tell you my personal opinion afterwards. Now, you can rewind and listen to it again. In my opinion, I think the first 2 times you hear it chanted, it's gas. That's my opinion. It sounds like "Gas the Jews," and then it sounds like it changes. Again, you had witnesses there saying they heard it. We'll see. I'm not sure what the rest of that is. Again, we know what we heard. Police say there's no evidence that was chanted. Sounded like the first couple times that was it. Again, this is the article. Obtained several statements from persons who were present outside the Opera House who believe they heard the words "Gas the Jews" that evening. Those persons not being able to ascribe those words to any individual. This is the last paragraph, because you did hear they bleeped it, but we had the "F the Jews" part. This is what's just perfect about the speech restrictions in Australia. Under Section 93Z, use the British / whatever version, of the New South Wales Crime Act, "Gas the Jews" may have met the threshold of incitement to violence to mount a prosecution, but "F the Jews" does not. It's a wonder why they don't feel safe. It's a wonder why Jews don't feel safe in Australia, and haven't for at least a couple of years. It's a wonder why they don't feel safe a lot of places. What's scary is the fact that despite the regular missile attacks and all that other sort of stuff, Israel may be the safest place for Jews. You'd hope that that would be America too, but not so much. Not so much lately. Finally, I mentioned this, I think, on day one, because there was a New York Post account where one of the witnesses said, the police were hiding. They were not fighting back for a good 10 or 11 minutes while these 2 terrorists went and took shots at and reloaded at innocents. A 10-year-old girl is dead. A Holocaust survivor is dead. But there were, reports the cops aren't challenging them, and excuses were made. Oh, these guys have rifles. They've only got, the cops only have handguns. And as I pointed out at the time, you can take pot shots at them with a handgun. You can try it. But if you just fire back, if they've got to duck their head, if they got to worry about popping up and getting shot, that's going to reduce the number of shots they can take, them, whether they can aim at people. It changes the situation. There's a thing called suppressing fire. It exists. You can fire off shots and try and force them to keep their heads down until someone can maneuver to get a shot on them. Can maneuver closer. If they're having to hide behind that bridge, that pedestrian walkway they were on, if they're having to hide behind that wall, somebody can take a few shots, somebody else can maneuver to get closer to them. This is basic. So do you ascribe the situation there to cowardice or an extreme lack of training? I'm not sure which to say. This next one, these are a couple of survivors, and this is the Erin Molan show. I'm not familiar with her, but Wayne and Vanessa Miller talks about this. This is heartbreaking, and it's infuriating. Take a listen.
These police officers were hiding behind a car. I tried to grab one of their guns. The other one grabs and he says, "No, I'm trying to grab for his gun." These men, these police officers, they know who I am, and I hope they're hearing this. You are weak. You could have saved so many more people's lives. They were just standing there, listening and watching this all happen, holding me back. 2 police officers. Where were the others? Not there. Nobody was there. Everyone, the public, helped. Nobody else. My little 3-year-old was saved by a pregnant woman who saw her crying and screaming, "Mummy, Daddy." We were there. There was not. Do you know how long did it take for police to come? How long did it take?
It was just...
No one. Everyone was too scared.
Yeah, that's pretty damning. There's another interview they gave, a brief one. Take another listen.
Do you have the girls? Do you have the girls? And he's like, "No, I don't. I've only got Capri. I don't have Gigi." There was a police officer that was shot on the side of his head, and I tried to grab actually his gun, and I was getting ready just to get in there. Another police officer jumped on top of me and says, "You can't leave. You're going to get shot. You're going to get shot. The guns are the guns are going off. The guns are going off." I said, "My baby, my baby, my baby." And
You know, I feel for her, and if you're going to be too much of a coward to start shooting back, then you shouldn't stop somebody else. There's something to be said for, parents defending their children and wanting to defend their children. I pointed this out the other day. You had Adam Kinzinger, who's I'm not sure if he still says he's a Republican. Maybe he's a former Republican. He used to be a Republican representative. Ex-military guy. Just for the record, being ex-military does not mean that you know jack squat about firearms, frankly. I didn't bring this up, but there's some photos going around of a bunch of sailors. I'm not sure if they're doing qualifications, but they're shooting handguns on some ship in the middle of the ocean at targets. And oh my, it's a miracle that they hit anything because their grips are so bad. And, one eye type thing, it's not the training you get even if you're, a civilian going to get your CCW. They're far more serious about making sure you can get bullets on target. So Kinzinger, when, oh, it's too much to ask someone with a handgun to take on someone with a rifle. And people pointed out that Elijah Dickon, had stopped a guy with a rifle at a mall shooting in Indiana, I believe, a few years ago. Hit the guy from 40 yards away. Impressive shooting on his part. It happens. People with handguns take on people with rifles. It's not a super rare event. And again, if you just take pot shots, at least you force them to keep their head down, suppressing fire. What I had forgotten was that no one should ever listen to Adam Kinzinger on firearms, ever, 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 because last election, this is a Dem Senate candidate. Kinzinger was out there with a Democrat who was running for Senate. I don't believe the Democrat won. That was a Republican state. He wasn't going to win. They're out there shooting guns. They're firing AR-15 at a gun range. And a local reporter was struck by a bullet fragment. And they post on X, oh, great day at the range. And, always have your first aid kit handy. Shrapnel can always fly when you hit a target like today. You got to be ready to go. We had a first aid kit, so we were able to take care of the situation. I'm glad Ryan is okay and able to continue reporting. Ladies and gentlemen, here are those pictures. Kinzinger's on the right in both photos. The Dem Senate candidate is on the left. They both have AR-15 rifles. There's a bolt action. I'm not sure what the caliber of that one is. The AR-15s are probably 5.56, so your standard round for AR-15s. Note that the safety rules for shooting steel, because steel stops bullets, it doesn't pass through steel. These bullets do not pass through steel, despite what some gun control advocates would like you to believe, where a single bullet can decapitate a person. These bullets do not go through steel. The general advice on shooting steel targets with a rifle is the target should be at least 100 yards away. Why? Because shrapnel and ricochets. Handguns, it can be 10, 15 yards, probably okay. I've shot handguns at steel at about 10 yards and had shrapnel bounce off me. It's a handgun. It's a bigger bullet. It's a slower bullet. It does less damage, but I've had it bounce off me. So I'd say 15 yards, just to be safe. It did not. When I've been hit by that with handguns, it bounces off. It's not traveling at a speed that it's going to do a whole lot of damage as long as you've got your eye protection on. Note in the left picture, Kinzinger has his eye protection on his head. Another no-no. And wow, that's a heck of an optic to have for shooting 10 yards away. A rifle. These guys are amazing. Here's them, this was, if this shrapnel had hit this guy in the eyeball, he'd have lost it, because that's a heck of a lot of blood. That's a heck of a big thing of shrapnel. Because these guys are idiots. Ladies and gentlemen, I would have left. If I'm reporting there, I'd say, you guys should not be firing rifles at steel targets 10 yards away. This is dangerous. Don't do it. I'm leaving. Obviously it's dangerous. This guy's lucky. This guy's lucky he still has his eyesight. He was wearing, eye protection, it looks like. Good for him. But if that had hit him in the throat, lucky. And here's Kinzinger with this shit-eating grin. Excuse my French. Yeah. Adam Kinzinger, shut up. Just don't even. don't even weigh in on this. Oh, I was in the military. If you were in the military, you'd know not to shoot steel targets 10 yards away with a rifle, you idiot. Yeah, no. We're going to close with some more Babylon Bee jokes at Australia's expense and Islam's expense. Australian man who wrestled gun away from terrorist charged with unlawful firearm possession. Again, it's a joke, but that's the sort of thing that they do. Heck, that happens in blue states around here, kind of, sort of. They'll. Oh, yes, you lawfully defended yourself with a firearm, but you weren't allowed to have a firearm, so we're not gonna charge you with manslaughter or murder or anything because that was justified. But you had a gun, so we'll get you for illegal possession of a firearm. That happened recently in New York. Guy was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He was defending himself. He shot and killed a homeless guy who was attacking him. And he's going to spend 4 years in Rikers or Sing Sing or something like that in New York because of the gun possession. Because at the time it happened, New York wouldn't give you a permit. And Kathy Hochul isn't one who's going to offer the guy a pardon. Groundbreaking new study finds Islamophobia may be partially caused by Muslims killing people all the time. You think? Got a picture of the Twin Towers there. You don't see that much anymore. So we don't. All the time with this, it's the Norm joke. Norm Macdonald, God bless him. The guy. I wish he was still around. It's a tragedy that he died so young. He famously made a joke. It's like, what if a nuclear bomb or a dirty bomb goes off in American City, killing hundreds of thousands of people? Can you just imagine the backlash against peaceful Muslims? Maybe the concern should be all the people who were murdered, not the backlash. Show concern for the people who were murdered first. It's the... Yeah, go figure. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Again, I realize it's the Christmas season. If you're interested in subscribing to my Substack, paid subscriptions are great. Unpaid subscriptions are great. Telling your friends about the Substack or especially the YouTube account is great. Hoystory.com's good. Twitter's good. Please, if you've stumbled across this, please follow me. I really would appreciate it. It's near the end of the year. I'm still applying for like 9-to-5 jobs. It's few and far between. I saw another report online talking about this DEI push and about how especially white males who are Gen Zers or millennials are having a hard time finding jobs because, active discrimination against them. I'm not sure. It's impossible for me to know how true this is, but 50-something-year-old white guys who are looking for work are having a hard time too. So if you've got a job, if you need someone to do video, photography, writing, copywriting for you, editing, anything like that, get in contact with me. Any one of these ways, I appreciate it. Again, tell your friends, tell your enemies. I'd really like to grow this. I'd really like to eventually be able to live off this. It would be nice. My wife would appreciate it. We could get our backyard done, which is now just a bunch of weeds. But thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.